Okay. All right, so do you have any questions about what we've done up to here just for a minute or two before we move onwards and forwards? Yes, sir. Well, that's a little bit later. So that's part of the thing where I said that the front knee and the back knee open up your dong. If they do, it's a tearing action. The phrase they use is tearing silk. So if you take a silk bolt and the way you pull it, and that's effectively what it does. It causes, from your perineum and your dyne, it causes your energy to go boom in both directions at once. Because there's never a time in Xingyi, even if you don't have any weight in the foot, there's never a time that you don't have the full energy and internal power of the body on the weightless leg. As an example, many forms, for example, of martial arts, right? Like, what is the biggest thing they have in karate? Well, you can't really deliver a knockout blow with your weight on your back leg. Nonsense. Fiddlesticks and poppycock. Okay? And I remember that demonstrating that to quite a few quote-unquote masters in Japan and just didn't quite know what to do with it. No, you can, but not if you're depending upon impulse momentum. Because on your back foot you don't have, but frankly speaking, there are a few boxers of whom the person who jumps into my head was a person years before who was quite good, called Prince Nazim. He used to do it all the time, stepping backwards to knock people out. His weight wasn't on his front leg. So I would not recommend that you do that in the beginning, because you really have to have, once your legs are completely open, then you can focus on a tearing between each leg. But until that time, the only thing that you really want to do is just to get each leg to just open the area. Because otherwise, it's too much pressure. And most people won't be very successful at it. And classically in Xingyi, that was never anything they did with Santi for the first 6 months or a year. And that's just a classic procedure. And it's for good reasons. It wasn't classic because it was something they did in the old days. It was like, you know, you don't play the stock market by deliberately losing your money every week. It's for good reasons. That's a classic procedure. Make it, don't lose it. So it goes something like that. Okay, now if we look at the element of metal, we need to consider something. Can your mind only focus on one thing at a time, or can it focus on multiple things at one time as though it is one thing? The second one is what Xingyi does. Now, in many forms of qi practice, many meditation practices, you have a one-pointed focus, right? But your one-pointed focus is like to this, and you lose everything else. The whole idea in Xingyi is that it has to become to where if you get all these things going up, down, left, and right, you recognize all of them at once as though you are only taking your finger from your nose. With that same kind of focus that most people have, you know, like with their eyes, like, you know, bearing down on something. So you have to consider that it's not that you are doing an up and a down or this and that's all happening at once. And to do that, I want you all just to consider something. We live in a world of multitasking. And if you're able to be successful at it, because many people can't, your mind has to open up to a certain degree to talk on the phone, watch what's on the screen, and be writing something down and keep all three of them together as though they're one thing. And if your mind shoots, oh, I shoot to that one, 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 your stress load radically increases. Not a little, but a whole lot. So how does your mind open up? And that I am posing to you kind of as a Zen koan, as a thing to ponder. And we'll get into that tomorrow. We won't do it today, but I want you just to do everything that you do. If you're going to focus on multiple things at once, it's not that your mind is jumping around like a jackrabbit or like, you know, a ball in a pinball machine, or if anybody here is Japanese, it's not a pachinko ball that's bouncing around. It's all at once. And to do that, your mind has to really open up. It has to open up. The destructive, in my personal observation, and I have been paid the big bucks to teach stress management. I don't do it anymore because I just, don't want to do it. It's that simple. Is that you get people because their minds go from, and it finally becomes too many things until finally they can no longer maintain good internal coherence. So the question is that everybody always wants to do each thing as best as they possibly can, right? But if then you flick to the next one, you know the thing you can be guaranteed? That your full attention didn't go on to that thing. You just had the illusion of it. So the question is, how do you do just a little bit less? How do you leave in a margin of error of safety so that you don't go 100% out, but you can go in every direction? And this is absolutely critical of the mind practices of Xing Yi. Okay, so I just thought I'd mention this and do with it what you will for the moment. Okay, so let's continue. Now, we got to here, we went to here, we went to here, right? Now, watch what's going to happen. First, remember how we did the bit that your foot's going to go and open up your legs? I don't recommend you do the tearing yet. I just recommend you get your legs open. And the answer is, yes, it can be done with the tearing. But now, we look at what you're going to do with your hands. So I'm going to take each hand at a time, but bear in mind that when it's happening, they're both moving together. In your hands here, it's going to go slightly. It's out. Can you see the circle, yes or no? It's going to go out, and when it goes out, the hand's going to open up like so, and then when your foot really goes down, it's going to twist, and everything's going to drop to a point. Going to drop to a point. Now your other hand, which, and again, it's this the tearing apart thing, do it with your arms in the beginning, don't do it with your legs. That's all I'm trying to say. Now the other hand, if we look at this here, watch, my hand is going to go slightly forward and down in a circle until it comes pressing down where my lower dantian is. Pressing down, like to get the Chinese term is on. If you want to get it right now, very simple, so you have no ambiguity. Sit on the floor. Don't sit in your chair. Sit, get your butt on the floor. Put both of your hands on the side of you. Now, press down to lift your butt off the floor. That's it. No, don't just push. Press down like you're gonna compress something. And watch that lift you up. The down will cause the up. Because the bottom hand is what's called an, and that's what this means. This is what it means to do an. Okay, so come back in your chair again, please. That's fine. Now watch my hands. Can you see this splitting thing, yes or no? Like tearing a telephone book or anyway, a few pieces of paper anyway. Look. So what is the top hand doing? It's extending forward, first with the edge. Second, the hand's going to turn down. We'll get how you do it. It's going to turn down. So if you just come here, anybody, come here, Isaac, look. So think that there are many forms of Xing Yi, some of them even actually, the hands go this way, but the principle is the same. The action you're doing is called, in Xing Yi, is called piquan, or chopping fist. So let's get the multiple ways in which this chopping might be done. The first one is that if your hand's here, look, cut. So maybe, if you have a sword, if you have an axe, boom, this is the one that kind of plants right into the middle of his head. Yes? You can do that with an axe. You might not chop wood that way, but you could do other things. Has everybody got that? So look. You see that part? And if I do it his chest, and I'll do it very light, boom, okay? So that's a tomahawk. That kind of a chopping action. The second one is the way you chop through wood, or if you have a sword, you actually can cut right through a body. And that's the second one. The way that's done is like so. Look from the side. You see the coming down, and that bottom hand top and the bottom. See how they're tearing away from each other? And the bottom hand is coming to here. And this is all used for that if my hand is here and somehow I block him, this one takes him over this way as this one hits him. Okay, pretty simple. Yes? Important points about this. Number one, in front of your physical body is your etheric field. The whole thing in Xingyi is you do not break the etheric field. So your fist should never come more than a fist, your hand should never come more than a fist distance from your body. Okay? Point number two, if you're thinking of martial arts, here's a simple fact. If someone catches you, and they catch you like this, and they catch you like this, and your hand's this close to your body and you don't have any space, guess what they do? They pinch you, and then they hit you with the other hand. Whereas if someone gets your hand here, you can always move it if you have that space. So you can think of it either way you want. In terms of energetics, what it does for your mind and your body, it's really about the etheric field, and whether they can pin your hand or not is actually somewhat irrelevant. In terms of martial arts, it's terribly relevant. Okay? As well as you'll get way more power if you play with your etheric field than if you cut it. Because as soon as you cut it, you will drop the energy level in your body. It will go from way high to much lower. Okay, so now, just look at this here. Did you all see that? Now there are numerous ways this is done. Pichen, and this depends upon the style, and I'll just give you a recommendation what to do. Since I'm a lineage holder, and since there's numerous forms of Xingyi, and since I've actually trained in several of them, as the phrase goes, I don't have a prejudice about whether you do it, you know, if you're a musician, whether you play with a sax or a guitar or a violin. I mean, they all got their place and they all do something. But you have to consider that with Pichen, you have two things. One is that, look, it's really just about coming straight down. So I don't chop wood that often, but I did have a bit of experience with swords. And what kind of a sword cut is that? That is that type of a sword cut where it finishes, where, for example, if you'll just see I don't do anything, it's like, I'm going to do it to the side of his body. It's that my sword goes, and that's like to split his head, right? But then again, it's also done when you have swords that you do this. And that is that you split his head and you come down his body and you try and get as much of it as you possibly can. That's also part of a chopping action. The fact is that you can chop wood that way. Or carrots, if you want, with a knife. Doesn't much matter. A cut is a cut is a cut. So the two things are that, is your hand really going from this point? Is it really going to extend and then come back slightly? Do you understand? That's the goes out. Or is it going to be also more about just dropping straight down? Or is it going to be actually about dropping straight down and going forward? As in you do this with a sword all the time. That's when you drop down and you go forward. All of these are cuts. When you look at it as a martial art, if you practice a martial art, the theory behind it is that you should practice as many ways with any motion to cause the greatest possible kill range, under the greatest number of circumstances, with the greatest variables in how a person can defend themselves. Now, so I'll leave that alone. Any of you want, I'll be more than happy to show you the technical details of, you know, how you bust somebody into small pieces, they say. That would, you know, murder for fun and profit, as it were. You know, we call that military. It's not called murder. It's called national security, or, you know, mafia call it, you know, just profit. You know, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. I mean, whether the animal is ripping you apart with lofty ideals, or he's ripping you apart because he's in a bad mood, or he's ripping it apart because if you do that, you will get more bananas, he still ripped you apart. Okay, now, the next thing we want to look at, which goes a bit beyond this, is that if we're going to look at it in terms of our body and our health, when you do a Pichen that has both the downward and the forward. Can you see this? You see how I'm going down and forward? It opens up the lungs better. If you do it to where you have just the more forward, that opens up the spine better. How are you doing? Makes your spine stronger. I don't know. If you have a physical issue or a health problem, you might want to do one more than the other. Can you all follow me? If you combine both of them, well, you kind of get it half-half. That's it. I mean, I really wouldn't say there's much more to it than that. But here's another issue you want to consider. The human mind is very often not flexible. It can do this, but it can't do that. So the type of action where you're going like this creates a certain kind of mental ability to do things which are in some way associated with that kind of energy moving. If you do it where it's forward and down, that creates a mind that is flexible and able to do in that type of a situation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what you have to do is just play around for a bit and find out, well, like, what's your need and what's the best way you can match it. Otherwise, someone just says, well, you know, this is the only way to do it. That's what you do in our school. That's what we do. And, you know, fair enough. But if you actually want to make it useful for your life, you have to consider and notice for a while what it's doing to you. Okay? And that's it. And then do what's good for you and, you know, don't do as much of what isn't. I don't know you really need to go much farther with any sort of greater sophistication in that. So now, but I want to make another point here. Now here's where I want you to see something, because now we're going to begin the procedure of twisting your arm. Can you all see my muscles twisting? That's a question. That's why I'm wearing a shirt, so you can. Can you see them twisting? That's a rotation. My muscles aren't particularly twisting. Just take a look. If I do this, my muscles are not particularly twisting. Look at it now. Can you see the twisting happening in? Yes or no? Okay, so now you want to twist your arms. So now let's look at this. Your lower arm, the nature of the twist, if we would take the thumb, is it's twisting towards your spine. It's an inward twist. In other words, it's going this way. Your outer hand, if you're trying to project it, becomes an outer twist. If you're trying just to bring it purely down, it's an inward twist. So inward, outward. Let's just get some vocabulary here. Put your hand like this, stick your thumb. Okay? That's an inward twist. Go the other way. That's an outward twist. The inward and outward being defined by, this is the center line of your body, that's away from it, that's outward, inwards in toward it, yes? But then it flips when, see I started this way? And that goes outward. Now, if you flip the hand, it goes the opposite direction. That's an outward twist, and that's an inward twist. So you just have to play around. It depends upon, they have a term in Chinese, they call it fan shou dui shou, whether it's the back of your hand or the front of your hand. And that determines, you know, the twisting, and you twist in opposite directions for each of them. Now, the one other thing we're looking at here is that I'm gonna want you to play around with this for a bit. If you're gonna get this twisting, so you have two things. He has his hand, do all the jazz you to make your arm strong. Now watch something. If I'm here and I twist my hand this way, what does that do to him? He went down, didn't he? Yes or no? And the object is that when I do this, I want this hand to link to my front foot. Yes? Now likewise, we take him this way, this is my back hand. That when I'm here, look, the twist to bring him right down. Your thumb now should point your lower dantian. You should have the sense of your thumb pressing your lower dantian. Pressing it. Your thumb pressing your lower dantian. Okay, how are we doing? Yes, no? We're very simple mechanical. So I'd like you to get up now and just like play around with this a little bit. So step number one, do it with each other. So watch. Your hand's out here. Oh, sorry, whoops. Now, next point. Turn your waist as your hands go down. And just see if you can, remember that business about softening up in here? Well, we really have to add that in so that, come here, Isaac, for a second. And this you're gonna have to check each other. Because then, as they said, we come back to this after lunch. So he goes and does that. Now you see these muscles here. Let me do it on this side, might be a bit easier. This thing here, as it goes in, this is what drops your chi down your right channel. The one here drops your chi towards your left channel. Now, if it's classic Xingyi, his elbows from his twisting are facing the ground. That is 45 degrees to the ground, or 90 degrees, that is the ground. So now, the more he puts his arms out and he does this little thing, I want you to stand in back of your partner and just put your hands here and just kind of relax and see if he can start to soften them going in. That you want to get. Okay? Now, what you can do for a moment is just out of curiosity, if you want to test that. So you stick your chest out and then you do this thing and, like, you know, I don't know, just grab your hand like this, bring it down. Okay? Now, do the shoulders nested and bring it down. And you get way more power. But I want you to find this out for yourself rather than just going, he said that. Do it for yourself, because once you kind of get it, you're never going to forget it. How are we doing? Yes, no? Go for it, folks. Now, as we look into this whatever, we're going to focus a little bit now on the upper body. But I want to make a point to everybody. In your legs, your energy moving through your knees is a big deal. And there are two ways it's done in Xingyi. And it really is a difference in the styles, and it comes down to this. One is that if you stand so that your knee is on a straight line with your ankle, and this knee is on a straight line with your ankle, that is putting your knees at the least risk. You can't get the strength out of that you can by turning your legs in a bit more, but it's relatively speaking a risk-free zone. The second thing you have is a little bit harder, and I'm not really going to take the time to teach you, because if I did, it's going to take several hours, and this is too short a workshop. But what I want you to get is the second way it's done is like so. You see my knee? Oh, let's see, from this angle here, maybe you can see this better. See how my knee seems like it's turning in? But it's not that my knee is turning in, it's that my legs are, and my quad is closing, and the twisting of my legs is so tight. And that tightness is screwing right into my foot from my hip without any pressure going into the knee. I am simply saying this because you will see people who do this. As a general rule, if you're super skinny, the vast majority of people who did this at least start out their training as being extremely thin. But as people got bigger in any of the Xingyi, Bagua, Tai Chi styles, they absolutely had a tendency to go to here, simply because the torquing forces have to be exactly right. Do you understand? You don't have a lot of leeway about going to the left or the right, or, oh dear, or O, S, H, dot, T. That's what happens. You get into a big problem. And to really get that, you have to have the twisting going all the way from your butt and everything, being really super tight. Fact of the matter is that most people don't have it that tight. And the danger is less for people who are very thin, because they just don't have as much weight that can go into their knee from their upper body. You know, it's one thing for a joint to take 30 or 20 or 30 pounds of pressure. It's another thing for it to take 60 or 70 or 80. And that's where the problems come from. Okay? So now next, having said that, we're going to go to some other place now. Now, here, we have that when you do this, and there's even methods that kind of go like this, and they did that. But there's many of them, but the point is that the palm is pressing down. The palm either is going to press down, or the palm can project forward, but then the underside of the arm is going to press down. So you will see these two things in almost any Xingyi book, or if you see films, you see anything from anybody, you're basically going to see the palm in one of two positions, give or take. One position is going to be like this, where the palm is facing the floor, and the other one is going to be where the palm is pushing forward. If the palm is pushing forward, then although this has a forward, the down side of the arm is really twisting down. Again, just look. You all see this? It's real twisting down. And then do you have a forward at the same time? Those are the two ways it's done. It's either done purely with this, boom, it's only down, right? Or else it's done where there's a down and a forward. The palm is pushing forward, but the rest of the arm is going down. And that's give or take, not different than what's done in Tai Chi, in Tai Chi Chuan, where you have, you know, the palm. This is the movement, it's called An, or press downward in the Yang. And what are we talking about? Press downward. Hands going forward. Well, see, yeah, the front of the hand is going from the down. This whole thing is going down. So you have the ability to energetically determine through the use of your mind where you want your energy to go. And that's where all these names about what forces are being applied. They're truly talking about the mind state that's producing that flow of chi in your body. It's not that it's just coming from a physical movement. The beginning, well, if you want to practice the down, well, you know, if you do it that way, for sure, it's going to be better. Because why? Because your hand's going down. It makes it easy for your mind to follow it. But then again, once you have it, you can make your mind do that. Now, let's look at the hand. Actually, before the hand, we need to do something before we get to the hand. So Isaac, if you come here for just a second. So now watch. So just get in that position. Now, his elbow is almost down, but slightly to the side. But if he twists inward, see what his elbow just did? Just dropped, didn't it? If he twists inward, his elbow even dropped more, didn't it? That's what you're after, so your elbow is facing downward. Likewise on the other side. See where his elbow is? But then again, if he twists, inward, and he twists inward here, can you see how the elbow just dropped more? And if he twists inward here, he can get more of a sinking in the elbow. Now, classically, the technique of P-Tren is done. For example, Isaac, if you'll come over here and try and lift my elbow up.
Bottom?
Yeah, go ahead.
Not so much.
I mean, it's like, you know, and I'm not pushing down on him. All I'm doing is just having this generalized sinking. And that's just going to mean that if he tries to lift, he's going to have a hard time. Okay, so do that again. Just, I want you to get the point. Go ahead, do it again. So if I go this way, I'll take him with me. Of course, you would say, well, I mean, why in God's name would you try and lift someone's elbow? For the life of me, I can't figure it out, but come over here. But I'll tell you something you will do. If you get that, then when I have this, now try and lift your hand up.
Not going to happen.
Lots of luck. Lots of luck. Okay, so, you know, it is that. I mean, you might ask the question if it's martial arts. Well, does that enable you to go boom and hit someone, like, as an example? If you had them bent over, you go like this and you break their back? Yeah, probably. I would say it's, yeah, more or less. It can do that. But the major point I'm trying to give you is that this is both your elbows are really going down. And from this elbow going down, what is that doing to my shoulder? Or look at my shoulder blades. As my elbow goes down, what's that doing to my arm? It's elongating the shoulder blade, isn't it? You want that. You want your body to stretch from the inside. So the elbow, if my hand were, this is fixed in space, come over, Isaac, just put your hand on my finger. Okay, but if I do this, can you see how that's getting the whole upper part of my body stretched? Yes or no? And that's something you want to be doing. So let's go back now, get our hands out here, and then let's play with our elbows. Both the twisting and the dropping of the elbow. Remember I said there are two things you can do with your arm. The first one is that you could do this, so it's just, you know, becomes like a boom, a palm strike, right? So what direction is that? Forward. It's out. Yes? If that was the case, your hand would come down with a outward twist, because that's what's going to put in your hand. But if you wanted to do it where it was going to be crunch, break his collarbone, you know, below the blood vessels in his heart or whatever, or just take his hand down so then you can come hit him with the other hand, then you're going to twist in. Because this is the basic rule. As you twist in, it brings your power towards you and towards your feet. It will bring someone else's power towards you and towards your feet. If you twist your hand out, it will cause your power to go up and away from you. So basically, I mean, what is this? If your object was I was here, and what I wanted to do was to move him over here, isn't that toward his outside? My outside? Then again, if my hand were here, and what I wanted to do was bring him to the inside, I would twist to the inside. So you just have a question. It's like a ship's rudder. You know, go this way, the boat goes that way. Go this way, the boat goes that way. Twist in, your energy goes into your core, down to your feet. Twist outward, your energy rises from your feet and goes outward. Okay? So if you want to bring somebody back, twisting in, why? If you bring him back, you're bringing him in towards you. But if you want to make someone go away from you, you twist out. That's it. Okay? Okay, now understand the principle that's behind why Santi is, you know, so whoopee-doopy. There are two things that you could say. One is that the body has internal power, and if it's working well, you're strong, happy, and then let's just say your body doesn't present the problems the body can. All right? You know, it doesn't matter if you're young or if you're old. There's no young person who doesn't want his body to work really, really well and with a lot of strength. And then there's no old person who just wish the strength could come back into their body because it's flying out the window. Lots of people have started Xingyi at 60 years old, and by the time they were 70, you know, putting it quite simply, been able to kick the behinds of 20 and 30-year-olds. But you have to understand that, again, you have two things. If you're going to put it in a martial arts context, I'll put it first in a martial art and a context for life. The first one is that the big thing that gets these things to happen is actually holding the standing posture. It's not moving. Can you all hear me? That's why, for example, the Wang Xiangzai, he took from what basically Pichen was and a few other things, and the basic principle is a whole series of exercise that goes like this in Xing, and he created something that was classic that are called the 8 postures of Yiquan. And basically what they are is they're okay. I don't think personally, my own personal opinion, having studied with a couple of the main students, I studied with 3 people who did Yiquan. The first one, Wang Xiangzai, his teacher was good friends, his first teacher, Chang Jiaotong, major Xingyi guy, was good friends with the guy who founded it, and Wang Shujing studied Yiquan for quite a while. That's why you'll always see him in my book and other things, these standing postures. That's what he was doing, was Yiquan. The second person was Han Xingyuan, who was one of Wang Xiangzai's formal disciples. The third person was Kenichi Sawai, who studied with him for 10 years and who was let's just say, anyway, he was a commander in the Japanese, he was a military intelligence specifically for assassinations, and he personally killed 400 people with his hands and a sword. So, kind of, you know, wasn't kidding around, right? So, I know what that is, and I've studied classic Xingyi, and in my opinion, the actual classic thing of Pichen is dramatically better than the standing postures of Yiquan, but the Yiquan postures are easier to learn and easier to do. So it's kind of you get what you pay for. You know, it's a lot cheaper to buy a Fiat, but you know, it's cheaper and it runs, and that's not the same thing as buying a really slick car, but it costs a lot more money. And by money now, I'm talking about effort, precision. I'm not talking about cash, because you can't buy this stuff. You got to practice it. So there's more practice money involved. Okay, if we look now at Pichen, the holding of the posture is where you really get this stuff to stabilize inside your body. Phase 2 is really learning how to go from that, and that's what Xing Yi does, learning how to go from what that power is, learning how to make it to be maintained and work fluidly with movement and with all these fighting applications. You will learn, and we'll start tomorrow morning, you will learn about how you go from Pichen on one side to Pichen on the other, which is the movement part of it. The whole thing is that, though, and if you were to practice classic Xing Yi and you were doing it as a martial art, once you got Santi together, you actually would walk at least a mile a day doing this movement before you went on to the other ones. Okay? A mile. You'll be surprised if you try it. It'll take you a few minutes. That what you're looking at is that the movement thing, if you don't actually have the internal stuff inside it, that's the reason why you can do all these things, Tai Chi, Aikido, anything, and have no power at the end. Because you never did the primary practices to develop the power to begin with. Then you use that power, learning how to move, and then once you understand what it is and you move, you get more power than you could get by just doing it standing still. So there's what's caused the entry level, right? What gets you in the door is not the same thing you do once you're in there and you walk through the room. But if you don't get through the door, there is no room. So we're now going to go into what some of these big things are, and I'll try and do my best, because since Jin Yuting, since my teacher actually studied with him, okay, Liu Hongji actually studied with the guy, and he also studied with Sun Ludang. He knew Sun Ludang quite well, and knew Jin Yuting, and blah, blah, blah. I figure, oh, as long as we got the book, you might as well use the thing. And we're now going to go into what some of these principles are, and I want you to understand, you can get the book. I mean, North Atlantic sells it. Somebody translate it. I mean, you know, it's okay. Translation's all right. So, it's not terrible. But I'll try and explain to you what this is, because this is everything you want to be doing while you're standing. There's more than what's in here. This is just the most basic important stuff. Okay, so the first one here is called Ding, which means the 3 pressings. But it's talking about a pressing upward. And as a matter of fact, the way very commonly Ding is described, when people describe it, is knocking a nail into a board. Okay, like, you know, the way you do it, and it fixes the thing against the wall. So that's Ding. The 3 dings are, the head presses upward. I'll show you what that is, because there's more to it than that than you might imagine. And as part of that, I'm going to go into how and the way that needs to be done in order to, at least the beginning, when we get to the spine, because there also is other stuff, about how you can get that blood flow to and from your head, which is the bane of modern technological life, where people are using their brains for more computations per second than they ever have in the whole of human evolution. And frankly speaking, it's not doing a lot of people a lot of good. The next one is the tongue presses against the palate. That's easy enough. And the hands press outward. Remember I said there's this, but there's usually at the end, it's classic, well, in the Hebei style, which is what this is, there's always the out and the down. And we'll talk about that. But remember what I said about pressing, the way I said like press the floor, like, you know, press cheese. Use your feet to press grapes. You actually have to squish the stuff out of it. Okay, now, the first one. Let's start with the one that's easy of these 3. Pressing the palate, it's the hard palate of the mouth. Say the word le. Okay, le, you'll be on the roof of your mouth. Le, and see where your tongue stops. Now, in Tai Chi, it's enough that you touch it. In most Qigong, it's enough that you touch it as being the bridge to the governing and conception vessel. That's this thing that goes, the microcosmic orbit, okay, to where the yang and the yin meridians change over in your head. It's enough to make the contact point, but in Xing Yi, that's not enough. That's why it's called Ding. It doesn't just say touch. Now, what happens, and this is very interesting, I want you all to put your hands around your head. Put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Say, let. Okay? Now, so you got where it is, where your tongue goes? Now, actually press your tongue up with a bit of strength and watch what happens to the plates of your head. Watch them open up. Watch the intracranial pressure inside your head decrease because the plates are opening up. Our head is not made of a bone, it's made of a lot of little bones with these things called sutures. Can you feel this? That's a question. Yes or no? So what I'm saying is, okay, so good. So that's the tongue on the roof of the mouth. It's different because in Tai Chi you don't do this. You only do this in Tai Chi when you do Fa Jing. You don't do it in any of the yin movements. And as a matter of fact, lots of people don't even do it with the Fa Jing. Okay, with discharging of energy. But in Xing Yi, it's done all the time. Okay? Because what you will find, the next thing I want you to do is put your hands here. Press a bit up against the roof of your mouth. Just put your hands, flat down on your knees. Press your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and again, you can't press too hard, but you can't be too soft, and see if all of a sudden you don't get energy moving into your hands. Purpose of this is to increase brain activity. So, for example, if you were, you're working on your computer and your brain's like turning to sludge, do this for a bit and watch the blood circulation in your brain increase. Okay? And they're doing, because if the blood circulate, that then gets your brain to have your body get a bit more woomph, as the phrase goes, or whatever you want to call it, bow wow arf, King Kong rises from the dust, whatever it is. I mean, seriously, So now we have the next one here. I want to save the head one for last because it's a bigger issue. So the hand presses forward. Well, it doesn't just hang out there like, oh, I love my hand. My hand looks so nice. It stays in the air. No, the hand actually presses the air. It has that internal feeling of pressing the air. Okay? Especially the center of your palm. That's really what's being discussed. Remember, if you really do classic Xing, it's also in your fingertips. That's all I can tell you. Now, next. Now we go for the head. Now, understand something. The head is connected to your neck. Everybody hear me? And your head does not float on its own. There is this thing called your neck and your spine. The term that's commonly used in Xing is Tou Yao Ding. That totally means the crown of the head. So let's watch this here. Look at my head. Look at my head right now. I used to come back and just like put a hand on top of my head. It'll be very obvious. In order for, now put it just a little bit above, otherwise they're not going to get the contrast. If you, just keep it in space. If your head presses upward and it stays there, two things happen. Your spirit rises, not spirit in the sense of grand spiritual, I'm a deity or something, but in Chinese medicine. When your head does this and you open up the baihui in the top, the spirit, or what they call, does a person look listless, half dead? Or they're like, weak spirit. Yeah, I think so. We're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, awake. Spirit in the sense of Chinese medicine, because it has a much bigger meaning. Spirit has a dramatically bigger meaning in Taoism than it does in Chinese medicine. But can you all see the way my head kind of... Now, if you have that thing with the tongue, that lifts, but it's more than that. In Tou Yao Ding, what you have to realize is that there's also your neck. And there's part of this which is a little bit hard to understand. So just see if you can watch. Right here, this is your collarbone. See where my fingers are? It's kind of corners of your mouth down, give or take. Right? Give or take. I do say, because it is actually not always in the exact same place in everybody. A little thing about anatomy is that, and that anatomical books show you where it is in most people. They're even stinkers. They come in and like, students try and get a person who's got the heart off center on the opposite side of their body to get the anatomy teacher and just really mess with his head. It's a standard joke in anatomy classes. But here, look, I want you to see something. You have a neck, yes? If you bend your neck very slightly, where you're still going to have the tongue touching the roof of the mouth coming up to here, you also can, by lifting the neck slightly and creating space in these vertebrae. What happened to the top here? Look. And this is standard thing you do in Xingyi. Watch. How much am I bending my chin and my neck? How much? It's not very much, is it? But can you all notice that it's happening? Now the trick is that when you bring your head down, a very slight bending will cause the blood to go out of your head into these vessels and back to your heart. Look, and you see this? And this causes the blood to go into your head. And this causes it to go down. And this will increase it going up. Now, I'm afraid that we don't have anybody here who's a doctor and really is good at pulses, but I've done this in front of them. Have you ever been when I've had someone who's, you know, a good pulse taker and just had them do this to me? Yes. Is it true that they say that it goes nothing and all of a sudden you can just feel the blood just like gushing like nobody's business? So trust me, I've done this. You know, and I've done this and I can, you know, do it in front of any group and, you know, much money as you want to bet I can't do it, please bring it on. That's all I got to say. Please. If I can't get it, I don't know, I'll find someone who'll come up with the bet and the money, regardless of what the number is. So here, look at this. I'm just making that point to saying I'm not being metaphorical, I'm being literal now. That this area right underneath your collarbones, see this little bending? Yes or no? But to do that, your neck has to close and it kind of has to bend this way, because this is another hooking of the body. They call it a ko. And then can you see how I'm lifting my neck up? You lift from the front of your neck, you bend from the back of your neck, you lift from the front of your neck. And what does all this do? Well, if you have your tongue pressing up on the roof of your head, and you have this, that when you lift up, that energy really gets full in the crown of your head. And it actually goes up to the end of your etheric body. And if you're really good, when you go like this and you finally get it together, you bring it from your etheric body into you. But the biggest point I want to make is that this is a way of increasing the blood circulation, the blood flow in and out of your brain, which, in my personal opinion, my humble opinion, my observation, as much as my poor little insufficient brain can work it out, this is a major problem in all industrialized societies right now. This was called God bless computers. And God bless all this technology, because it really messes with the blood flow inside people's heads. It really does. Too much activity. Personally, I don't think we're evolutionary developed enough for it. We haven't gone that far. But you all know what I'm telling you. When you're in front of a computer for a long time, your head starts turning to mush. Well, a big part of that turning to mush is the fact that the blood is no longer flowing the way it should in and out of the brain. So this is a direct antidote to that. Can you understand? Very direct, no games, no nonsense, pump, right to the vein. So now just watch. So what you're talking about is that in this, tongue to the roof of the head presses up, but now look. So let me bend my neck slightly. So it goes out. And when I bend my neck, and I can just do it with this little. This isn't much movement. Can you all notice this? But it's just enough that you coordinate the energy coming down from here and the blood coming out of your head with absorbing energy into your hands. And you coordinate the up with the head in that for pushing energy out of your body. How are we doing? So these are 3 pressings, 3 ding. How are we doing? Do you have any questions, or is this relatively clear? Okay. So what I want you to do right now is that, come here, Isaac, because you also have the next best prop. It's called you don't have long hair. So put your hand, go into P-train. So now watch this, huh? I'm going to be very gentle. Can you all see his neck and head? Because this is the time you want to see it. Please do not just listen to my voice. Use your eyeballs. That's what they're there for. See this here? Watch. See how it just goes slightly? This is an exaggeration. You don't even do it this much. Now the next one is you lift from the front of your neck and your head presses up as your tongue presses, as your hand presses. So the 3 pressings link, and each one energizes and strengthens the previous pressing. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do as part of this is that first you do that, go ahead. Then you're going to, okay, so just do that here. That's fine. Now, don't do this. I mean, you know, do the before and after bit. Take your arm like this, and this is how you're going to get it really easy so you don't have any. Now, just drop your weight on him and see how he holds it. Now, do those, do that, and then do the ding. And you should find that you're getting quite a bit stronger. Okay? Remember, these principles in Xingyi are not for fun. If you want to compare it to athletics, do this type of circuit training and your running speed will increase by blah, 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 or you will be able to do better basketball, football, I mean, pick your sport. Okay? But these are internal training methods. And if not, go for it. If you want to get the idea of a ko, look at my finger. That's a ko. For example, you can see this Xingyi and Bagua, they do movements like this. That's a ko. You see this? That's a ko. Now, this one talks about 3 kos, but there's many, 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 many more. So again, let me have you here, Isaac. I'll show this. First, I'll show it on you, and I'll show it on him without a shirt on. Look at me. Look at me right now. Just hold there for a second. I'll put my hands down. Do you all see me do something up where my shoulder's nest is? Look. Now, you probably can't figure out what it is, but I'll show you what it is. Come here. If he puts his hands out, just put your hands down because nobody can see through your arms unless they have Superman-like abilities. Now, see this here? Beside the fact this goes in, if we take the very edge of the shoulder, it does this. Look what I'm doing with my hands. Now watch. Put your hands out. See the shoulder here? That's where the button goes in. How are we doing? Yes or no? Yep. Now I would just mention that as corollaries to this, there also is another one which, for example, in Bagua they use the term liotun si kwa, or shrinking the kwa. It's the same thing. That here, the quad does this. See if you can see it. Do you all see that little? It binds the inside. Okay, so that's that one. There are other ones. There is a way that is done in the inside of the knee here with these muscles. And what they do is that beside the fact you twist them, there is just this general thing that goes chomp and locks it into the insertion points and the adductors on the inside of the thighs. Now the back of the palm, this is the back of my palm, whether my hand is facing this way or it's facing this way. Can you all get that? Now if we look at this, just look at my hand. I am not doing a ko. But now watch. You see the way it's spread? Now it's easy to do it with your fingers, but just look at my hand. Can you see the way this is going like this as though it's going to come around and join in the front? Yes or no? You tell me. I'm not assuming you can see anything. Look at my hand. Look. This is what they call a ko. Hook. I don't know. It's a terrible word to translate. It doesn't really have an English equivalent. Okay, look at this here. Look. Can you see it making that kind of a wrap? What it does is that naturally, if you do that, it causes like a bowl to be formed in the inside of your palm. Okay? So that's number 2. Now, this is the one that most people have a lot of trouble with. Look at my foot right now. Did you all see the way it just rounded? And what that does is really put the bottom of your foot so you can sink on it. Because if you don't have this, your foot could kind of collapse to one side or collapse or collapse or collapse. And this action helps raise the arch. But can you all see? Could you all see the way it just lifted? Yes or no? Yes. So look at my hand. Another way of looking at this is, come here. If he just puts his finger here, right? Another way of looking, if you look from the side, is that if I make a ko, what happens to the back of my hand? It goes that direction, doesn't it? Well, Just given your foot's facing a different direction, it's effectively going up. How are we doing? Yes, no? Okay, so that's the third one in the foot, yes.
That's essentially what you were doing before?
Well, no. Well, put it this way. Yes, I did the ko with my foot, but I was making a point. I was just making sure all parts of the foot are on the ground. If you add this ko, the spring in your foot radically increases. So what I would advocate that you do, just to see what these things do, is that, okay, can you come here for a second, Jess? Just get a different person for the moment, okay? And do me a favor, and just there we go. So let's face everybody here. So the first thing is, the first ko was what?
Shoulders.
Now, so again, don't do it. And then just have the person lean on you. Now, do the ko with your shoulder. And now if you want to do it with your quad also. And see what the difference is, how much more strength goes in there. So test it. That way, at least this way you'll know if you have some way of knowing if you're doing it or not. Now, what's the second one?
Feet. No. Hands.
Now, okay, so again, just have your palm normal, and I'm going to press against you. Can you want to push me back or do something? But you just don't want to let me come in. Go ahead. Now, round the back of your hand and see what the difference is.
Helps a lot.
Gets a wee bit stronger. Only showing, see, all these things is there ways of bringing chi to that part of your body. Can you all follow me? That's what these things are. Now, we do the next one. Come here, come here.
That's the feet.
No problem. Now, the first thing is that don't do it with your feet. And don't do it with your feet. Now, do it with your feet. It's a little better, not much. You need more practice.
Yeah.